Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make him the cutest that I've ever seen. Give him two lips like roses and clover, and tell him that his lonesome nights are over. Sandman, I'm so alone, don't have nobody to call my own. Please turn on your magic beam. Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is Adam Loyal, host of the podcast Friends to Know. You can visit them on friendstoKnow.space, right? And friends-to-know.com, I believe.
Friends-to-know.space is the easiest.
Friends to Know Space. Welcome, Adam, to Nox Mente.
Welcome, Adam.
Hello.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to finally have you sitting here in the chair with us in the bar, in the dream bar.
In the chair.
Yeah, I've been only hanging out with you guys in the D&Ds and the Discord chats. So this is nice to finally join Jerry on his podcast.
Yeah, really.
I know. You guys are hilarious behind the scenes. It's too funny. All right. Well, let's get this Nox Mente show off the ground. Let's go to sleep or wake up. So, why don't you tell us about your early childhood, the symbols that stick out, any relevant dreams, the stuff that formed young Adam? And try to keep it in the early days.
Well, I can say that I only remember a couple of dreams from when I was a kid, and they were pretty formative, at least in the things that I was interested in. They mostly involved aliens and abductions and grays, things like that.
Oh, wow.
Alien invasions. They were almost always nightmares. And when I was a child, I was super interested in the esoteric, UFOs, Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious Universe, Land of the Lost, Land of the Giants, I guess.
Oh, I love
Lost
those,
in
yeah.
Space. Yeah,
Yes.
just all those old sci-fi things that would run in the afternoons. Twilight Zones.
Yes.
Those were really formative when I was a child. Star Trek: The Next Generation. Yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of a really weird, introverted kid who was really into sci-fi.
Did you grow up in a city or in maybe suburbs or the country?
A coastal town, so a city of, I think, 5,000. But, within,
okay.
I mean, essentially right in the middle of West Palm Beach.
Nice. So
not a small town.
But also, I like to get at that information because it's formative for your unconscious mind. It helps form your symbols. So if you're say you're born in Brooklyn, you have a different experience, Did you?
Yeah, I grew up within 5 minutes of the beach, so I spent a lot of my childhood at the ocean and on the beach.
Oh, that's lovely. Do you actually recall any of those alien early dreams?
Yeah. One of them, and I'm trying to think, it was somewhere probably between the ages of 10 and 12. And I remember that we were doing Christmas decorations. And so I was trying to figure out which bulbs were going to work, and they were in this giant bundle, and we had a lot of flashing bulbs. And so I got really tired in the middle of doing this. I fell asleep on the floor. I decided to crawl up into my bed, and I had a loft bed that my dad had built me.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
all this stuff was on the ground, and so you can imagine this ball of just lights coming out from all different directions. And I was a really messy kid, so I had junk all over my floors, and I had things hanging inflatables and balloons and Lego models all hanging from my ceiling. So I wake up in the middle of the night having a nightmare that there is an alien invasion. And this nightmare started off where I'm sitting there and it's literally kind of like I'm in the dream. I'm in the bed and I'm looking out the windows. That's what's going on. And I see this giant aircraft, and I can only explain it's kind of like a cross between an SR-71 and then something you would see in a Russian or maybe an anime comic. And the wings were mechanically chunk, cha-chunk, folding up and down in a very slow speed as it flapped through the sky, but it was still like a jet. And I could see all these lights coming down and shooting down to the ground. And I just knew it was an invasion. I know somewhere in there, I either intuited or saw grays running around. And so now I'm thinking that there's huge invasion and this is going on. And then I wake up in my bed. And when I'm in my bed, all I see from below me is all these flashing lights coming out in all these different directions. So in my window's right below. So it would be like mirroring what I was dreaming was going on.
Yes.
So for probably like, I don't know how long it was, but it seemed like 4 or 5 minutes. I was like stuck to my bed in a cold sweat, truly believing that there was an alien invasion going on.
That's profound. How old would you say you were?
Probably 10 or 12.
That's great. Sometimes when helicopters and things with that kind of helicoptery repetitive sound are a signal of sleep paralysis, which is, that step to getting out.
Interesting. I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's pretty common. So that was interesting. I wonder if you were out of body, Adam.
Could have been.
Interesting. What sign are you?
Virgo.
Virgo in the house. All right. And so we like this question a lot. So have you done psychedelics?
No, not hard psychedelics, marijuana only.
Okay. And the only reason we ask that in this context of the show is altered states, right? This is about consciousness in the end. And also, this is kind of one of our newer things too. Do you know your blood type?
Oh gosh. Yeah. I don't remember what it is. I've got it written down somewhere.
Well, that doesn't
I
help
would have
us.
to get, it would help you for now.
More interested if you were negative or not.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for, is this kind of RH negative.
No, I don't. I do not
on.
believe that I am.
All right. Well, let's get into about your general activity in the dreamscape. And I'm talking right now just generalities. So how do you experience dreams currently? And this includes like black and white, vivid color, sound, sense, smell, all of that stuff.
Essentially from behind my eyes, exactly as I was in the proper position within the environment. I'd say that the colors aren't vivid. They're subdued a little. So not grayscale or anything, but I don't know, more muted and more of a similar tone. So more like maybe brown tones, earth tones,
Like
a
sepia?
grimy city type thing. Yeah. And the environment seemed to be very themed in the texture and the quality and the colors. But aside from that, everything visually and proportionally aside from the absurd seems to be normal.
So in the landscape, do you find yourself in places that that like a house that you always go to, maybe it changes, but you're always like, this is the house, or buildings? Is there familiar scenery for you at all?
No, not okay. I shouldn't say it. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes there will be themes that pop up and they tend to be related. Like one of the dreams that I had semi recently, which involved a customer's garage, and they have a cat, and their cat's very good. And he has a cat door. He goes out and uses the litter box all the time, and they have no problem with him. But I could never do that with my cat, Luna. She's too crazy. So I had a dream that garage was attached to my house in the dream, and that I left the door open. And as I was coming back inside, I saw her coming out, and I tried to catch her, and I couldn't. And it was related to a whole bunch of other things going on. The fact that I just worked at that customer's house, and that Luna had just the night before I went to go outside, and the latch didn't clasp all the way. And I woke up in the morning and she was on the patio.
Oh, wow.
Behaving herself
Nice.
completely well. But it was, so yeah,
Yes.
I get environmental type themes to tie in, but it's not like I'm in this specific place. Like the place itself almost always, at least recently in my memory, is exotic.
Oh, so when you say exotic, what do you mean dreamscape wise?
So I would say standard physics of the real world. Okay, so when I say exotic, I would mean one of these other dreams I had was that we showed up at an amusement park that had these huge amusements. So there was like one on the right and one on the left, but it was more kind of like the Swiss Family Robinson that they used to have at Disney. I don't know if they still have it anymore. It's like a giant tree house, but it was themed,
definitely e-ticket ride.
Yeah, exactly. And it was themed around Survivor.
Yeah.
So it was like a Survivor thing, and you'd have to go and get immunities, but it was like a real challenge. And so that, I mean, to me, it's completely absurd, because you would look up into the sky and this thing goes so far up that I'd say probably 300 feet of climbing structure in the air, something absurd that could not exist. But there it is. And that's what I mean about the exotic in the dream, or like a roller coaster being in the middle of some sort of like hotel environment, being manned by caricatures that look like they should come out of Zelda Twilight Princess.
See, this is great. And to me, so using tagging along with that exotic theme, when things are clearly not of your waking life, that's usually, like, for me, a cue to that I'm dreaming, and then a gateway or some sort of welcoming to realize I'm dreaming. Does that happen for you?
Nope. As far as I know, I've never lucid dreamt.
Really?
Hmm. I mean,
Have you had
I'll wake up thinking a dream is real, like I'm still fully in the moment, and that's
uh-huh.
generally when I remember my dream. But yeah, I don't. I've tried to, but had no success yet.
Have you had any of the sleep paralysis experiences besides what I think you were having at 10?
No, no. I have had an out of
Interesting.
body experience,
Well, give us that.
which I guess I would kind of classify into the same realm.
Were you
This
asleep first off when you started?
No. Um, this happened. I don't know. It's been as long as I've been smoking pot. I've had a huge I had a huge cascading of synchronicities coming along that cultivated in this event, and they were all leading up to people trying to get me to smoke. I've had severe migraines my entire life. Was seeing one of the top neurologists that helped write like the definition of migraine for the FDA.
Oh,
Really,
wow.
like, yeah, I've been in, I spent almost a decade in research studies, been probably on like 9 or 10 different investigation and medications, injectable Imitrex, all these different crazy things. So, I mean, I struggled that with my whole life. Anyways, so I had all these synchronicities leading up. Then I went out for a night of drinking with somebody, and that triggered a migraine that was so bad that I tried dialing 911,
Oh my
and I
God.
had my phone in front of me, and the light was so bright on it that I couldn't dial 911.
Oh,
And I remember at one point like getting up and trying to get water out of the fridge, and I like literally like bounced off the fridge, like I walked into the fridge, like I was on the ground, and then I managed to make it back into bed. I know I should say this went on for probably like 6 or 7 hours. And I know my voice was sore. I ended up screaming at the top of my lungs during all of this. Um, it, I call it a near death experience because I thought I was going to die. I felt
mhm.
like it felt like I kept thinking that I'm having an aneurysm, something really
Oh,
bad.
no.
And then I kept wanting to die. And that was to the point where if I had been able to kill myself, I totally would have. I would have got my gun out, and
Right, the severity of the pain.
it was yeah, it was a pain that is beyond uh, description. Like when I say like I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, I couldn't even contemplate how to enact that type of pain on somebody. Anyways, so in the middle of all this, in the middle of screaming, I realized that I'm sitting off in the corner of the room and watching myself just screaming and writhing in agony, but I have no pain. And I was able to sit back. Yeah, I had an interesting talk with one of my friends, like just like not with her, and I know it wasn't with her, but like when you talk to yourself, like I could see her, and I was having a conversation, and it was a really wonderful experience in that sense. All the pain went away, and I don't know how long I was in that state before I ended up coming back and popping back into my body. But it ended up being very important to me afterwards because to me it's one of those moments where I go, okay, well, to me, I just proved to myself non-locality. Whatever you want to
Right.
tell me about anything else, I
Yes.
know that the pain disappeared. I could see my body doing it, and I was from over here. Now, I'm perception is reality, so I don't really care whether or not you think my brain made it up or not. To me, it's real.
Yeah.
So that was a really important experience to have come out of it. And of course, after that, I went immediately and tried to get myself some cannabis, and have been very happy to discover that I am very likely deficient in cannabinoids.
So, and since this transition onto cannabis, have you had any migraines?
I have, much less severe, much less infrequent. Never had one that bad. So I went from having them where they would come on once or twice a week, every week for months on end. Sometimes I would have them stick around for 2 to 3 weeks at a time.
Oh
And
my,
then having
ugh.
the longest I went without them would be 6 months, and that would be like perfect best. To now, I get a bad headache maybe once every couple of weeks. If I get a migraine a month, that would be bad. And if I do, it's much less severe. It's still severe, but the pain's not as bad. I'm able to function through it better. So yeah, to me, it was essentially a cure. It took me from being debilitated 20% of the time of my entire life, where I'm completely knocked out and not functioning, to being functioning, 28 days out of the month, which is amazing to me.
That's incredible, and it's a sacred herb, as we all know, and I don't have to preach about it, but that's an amazing story. I love the non-locality of that experience through pain, and that speaks to what we are getting at here in Nox Mente about states of consciousness. So in that
Well, and,
non-locality,
and I should say, and it might have been a pain trigger, which would be interesting. I've had a lot of experiences in my life with pain, motorcycle accidents, broken bones, tons of, things that, bruised organs and such. And
mhm,
this was just an icing on the cake that I equated it with a near death experience, because I think that there was something seriously going on inside of my body
mhm.
that corrected itself through something probably related to my understanding of the event. Um, but yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. Maybe it wasn't so much a near death experience, but a trauma induced experience.
That's the it to me. That's the way it comes off. No matter what, though, it's an amazing experience, and it for people. uh, You have having experiences is really where I root a lot of anything that I have any kind of conviction in. And so
Hmm.
once you go non-local, there's
Yeah.
no
Right.
going back. You're like, I'm out of my body here.
And that state too is also that pre-break state where where before your consciousness breaks, which was the target of many of those psychological programs in the '60s and '70s.
Mm.
Yeah, and so perfectly, this actually tied into kind of our psychedelics question. Is that's usually the role of psychedelics is to get some sort of sense of that.
Yeah, it enhances the it shortens the time that it takes to get there probably.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that at least, and I haven't done psychedelics, but to loop back onto the trauma pain, I learned a long time ago with my migraines that they change the way your body works drastically. Not just the way that your brain is producing chemicals, but your blood pressure goes off the chart. Your blood vessels constrict, parts of your brain start to swell. You actually, and that's what they say. Like the day after a migraine, what the reason you're so foggy is because you're having concussion symptoms. Your brain literally swelled. You got a concussion
Yeah.
essentially, and now you're trying to recover from this. And since then, I've had a couple of really bad migraines that where they changed my visual perception. And the one that I go back to is, I had this migraine and it started freaking me out, because I've had like speech disturbance and other things that have bothered me, so I didn't get too freaked out.
Hmm.
But like I remember looking at a lighter in front of me, and it looked like a Picasso painting, like it was all sorts of weird shapes. And I realized that everything around me, the cups that I had in front of me, the little table in front of me, everything had these, like it was completely misshapen. It was like a Picasso world. Everything was curved, almost like you had taken it through a Google Dreamscape,
Hmm.
art setting. And but then what I found interesting is that I was still able to interact with the entire world the same. So, like, I could grab something even though it seemed misproportioned to my normal worldview. And even like my arms and stuff would change shapes and proportions as I was reaching out to grab things, but I was still able to interact with the world in a completely fluid way. It was no problem, even though it looked funky and weird. And like, I mean, it's kind of like if you put on a pair of like binoculars, you put them the wrong way and try to grab something you can't. I had none of that type of issue.
Yeah, the depth.
And then I
Hmm.
also noticed that, like, when I got in the shower, I've got a ledge that sits right at shoulder height near me. And then I'm like, well, holy shit, this thing seems like it feels like it's way higher. Like I feel like I'm way shorter. And so I've had this happen before. I haven't had that Picasso thing happen, but I've had headaches where I then start to have my perspective on the entire world change, my proportions. Everything seems smaller. I seem much larger, but my
Okay,
interaction with the
yes.
world doesn't change. And I love this from a personal perspective because it proved to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that our perception is completely different. And I have zero way of understanding what you perceive because I've seen what I see as a fucking Picasso world and then something that's perfect square, but I can interact with them differently. And I'm like, well, if I'd never seen this other world that I'm normally in, that would be my normal. And so I don't know. I wish everybody was able to have experiences like that. And I think that's what psychedelics do. There's something going on inside the brain that's kind of mixing things up.
Yeah, and then of course the optic nerve and all that. I wonder sometimes too. There was, I can't think of her name, but she was a some sort of scientist. Stroke of Insight. She talked about when she had a stroke and how the world went. That, have you seen that?
No, I've heard of her though. I've heard her on I think a Coast to Coast at one point.
Amazing story, and it sounds similar, and then it's amazing, and it always gets back to, where is consciousness, what are we operating from, what's real, what's really real. And it's all our perceptions are such an elusive shadow game
Mm-hmm.
here in the end. So let's move back into dream territory. So you mentioned nightmares earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still get nightmares?
Well, yeah, even when I'm telling all these dreams, they all end up kind of being nightmare dreams. They're not happy-go-lucky dreams. They're all high stress. The one with Luna was her escaping afterwards. Me not being able to capture her and then waking up as she, is just outside. Yeah, they all tend to have just a negative flair to them. I don't have a happy dream.
Really? So all of your dreams are stress dreams?
Yeah.
Wow. So this is a question, and it's more about feedback. So have you had feedback from others around you that you sleepwalk or sleep talk?
I used to sleep talk a lot as a child, and I occasionally do now, but I'm not coherent when I do it now. The only thing I remember doing was counting to 10 in Spanish repetitively.
And you seem like you would be a sleep talker to me, from just what I'm gathering here, and even a walker.
What's with the OCD
Spanish? As a
Spanish?
child, but I don't do that anymore.
Do you know Spanish at all?
I know how to count to 10 in Spanish, and that's it. And maybe a
what's
dozen
with
words.
the OCD bit?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I at that point I just learned how to count to 10. Aside from that, I don't know.
Interesting. So, okay, on that theme, have you been able to correlate ever anything that you possibly learned, got a download from in a dream, maybe while you were learning something new in your waking life, but the dream somehow, in the dreamscape, you learned it, and then you were able to actually comprehend and play out functions in the waking life?
No, I wish. The only thing that I can, I see direct correlations to my life into how it's playing. And so one of the other recent dreams that I had involved me being in a van with my parents. And I think Angie was there too. And I know Bellatrix, my cat, was there. And we were right up along the beach. It looked like it was maybe Sanibel Island. And there was kind of, this little light wooden seagrass fence going off with some seagrass. And there was this open beach, and you could see people playing with dogs out front. And there was somebody that was out fishing and casting into the water. And then there was somebody out there that was playing with their dog. And the dog's barking. And I was holding Bella over my shoulder inside of the car. And she started to get nervous. So I'm like, okay, well, we need to put Bella away. And my parents were arguing, and which they tend to do a lot of the time. And then they had her cage in between them, but the cage was filled up with food supplies. And one of the things about my mother is she stockpiles so much food. She's always petrified of running out of food. If there's a hurricane, I know there's enough food for 5 weeks. And no joke. Yeah,
That's
I don't even have, it's not that I don't need to gather my own food. I do, but I'm never worried about supplies. Zombie apocalypse, that's the place to go. But so it's all filled with canned goods and supplies. And then I'm trying to ask them hey, Bella's freaking out, and I keep watching, and I'm not too concerned because it's not as bad, but like I can feel the tension growing as I'm watching outside. Then the person throwing the fish hook like throws it along into the water and the dog goes after it. And then it gets hooked on the dog. And then they pull this dog up, and it's this black, like schnauzer looking dog. It's a little smaller one. And they start yanking on the jaw, and then they pull it out really hard. And then this dog like transforms, and it looks like it's starting to convulse, and it grows into a much larger like gray dog. And then it starts convulsing, and then they like say, oh, it's having trouble breathing. Now, like, this other dog's really freaking out nearby, and then Bella starts going nuts. So then I start losing it, and then that's where the dream ends. But I have all these correlations to like my parents and they're arguing, to, you know, the supplies inside the cage, the fact that, you know, I have had, you know, situations where I've had to get Bella in a cage because I'm worried about her getting attacked by like Luna and stuff. So like I see all these things that correlate and they push into my life, and I see where they're coming at and where I'm at in my life, but I can never figure out what the meaning is for why I'm experiencing those events in that way.
It's interesting. Would you say that it sounds to me like, but I don't know because I'm not you. Would you say that the majority of your dreams are based in people and circumstances going on in your daily life?
Partially, almost always, because there's always an aspect of that in it. Or there'll be somebody that like I know who I've seen during, you know, recently, but is not somebody who I physically know, or I personally don't know, but I've seen them. Maybe somebody that works like the counter at a shop or something.
Mm-hmm. And so when you were younger, you had a lot of this alien type imagery going on. Has that followed you into adult life?
I, at least in my childhood, those are the dreams that I remembered. Yeah, it's always stuck around as one of my biggest fears. Like I remember as a kid, I would always close the blinds because I would look outside and see a bush and think that I saw a gray looking in or something move. And that fear has always traveled to me, even in my adult life. There'll be an occasion where I'll look out a window and it just like I'll think that's okay. And I know it goes back to my dreams, or at least, you know, those early experiences that I associated with them.
Why do you fear that?
Ooh. So this isn't, I don't, okay, so this could probably go under what you were mentioning before, sleep paralysis, but I don't know. I do know, and actually this is so weird. I don't know if this is what got me into ufology as a young age, or if it was a correlation, or if the other aspects that go into it. I essentially remember waking up as a child, perfect, like vivid memory. And I was in a bunk bed, and the hallway light was open, and I was up on the top, and I looked over, and a gray walks in the room, walks right up next to my bed, stare like, you know, like lower than eyesight because it's shorter, looks at me, and that's all I remember.
Ooh.
But that's like the one memory I have from my childhood that stuck around, that was crisp and vivid, and I've always remembered. And so I've always been on a ufology kick because I'm like, well, I don't know if that's true. I don't think that I was necessarily abducted by aliens. Obviously, it's in the wheelhouse because that memory is there. But I go, I'm really interested because I have a memory that I don't know why it's there, but it is of a classical story.
Okay, so on this one, let's dive into this one a
Yeah.
little more. How old were you for this one? Around about
Young.
under
I'd
10, around
Yeah,
10.
under 10. Under 10 is probably a good guess, somewhere between 5 and 10.
And what was going on in your life? Your with your parents and just in your life.
Don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I was in Boy Scouts at the time, in school. Yeah, I don't know. I know I've now, this goes into the other aspect of this. There is research in correlation to childhood sexual abuse and alien abduction dreams,
Yes,
which I
of course.
had as a child, but
Mhm.
I don't have any reason to correlate the two together, and I don't have any specific memories to know exactly the time and age that I was abused to line it up. But that has always also stuck in the idea realm of there of going, okay, well, is this also kind of like this uh, protective manifested memory that culture seems to have?
A blocked memory, or even
Yeah.
possibly a screen memory.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like
exactly.
a beard in a way.
Exactly. What fascinates me in all of it is that that memory is the one memory that was as clear as I could make it, and it was of a gray.
Yeah. Well, it's significant. That's why I'm just I want to make sure we parse out the other details.
Yeah.
So in the, and of course you don't have to answer anything you don't want to, you know that, of course you're a person. But in the memories of your abuse, were you conscious for that, or are they more watery memories?
Oh yeah. I don't have full consciousness of it now. No, it's suppressed.
But do you think it was a dream or really happened?
Oh no, I know what happened. Yeah.
And you were younger than you were. This was early abuse.
Yeah. Young abuse. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And what's interesting that this is the most vivid dream. Of course, that's scary. So you move forward. I would like to know, I asked this question earlier, but I want to
Wait,
dive deeper. Go, Jerry.
Can I ask about that?
Yeah.
Yes.
A little bit? Do you mind?
No.
Oh, that situation of abuse and then alien memories is typically kind of like a MyLab sort of signature,
Mm-hmm.
or what is said to be MyLab.
Right.
That group of people, or whatever they are.
It's classic.
It's totally classic.
It wouldn't surprise me. Obviously, I've known a lot of people in the military who, as children, had a lot of weird experiences where you kind of wonder if there wasn't, at least some mild infiltration there. But, if you just look at what's happened with Hollywood and with the rest of the world and different political governments and what's happened, just super creepy Biden.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's very possible that it is so big that 1 in 10 children are pulled into abuse, that 1 in 10 adults actually are pedophiles, and that there are these huge rings operating, and that most people don't think it's going on. So I do take that seriously into consideration, that it could have been part of a group like that.
Were you in any advanced programs in grade school, like
Special kids,
talented and gifted, or whatever, tag?
So technically no, but I did a lot of extracurricular activities.
For example,
really involved in the sciences, marine biology club, going down to the Keys for marine biology, a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, science fair, winning science fairs. But as far as academics was concerned, I was considered to be a slow learner, so had learning disability, quote unquote.
Yeah, me too.
I can't. How did I overlook this question, Jerry? This is a significant one in the background. What were you brought up with a religion at all?
Yeah, I was brought up under Methodist, and as a young kid, what's that?
I said thanks.
Oh. I went, as a kid, I pretty much went to all the local churches, probably 7 or 8 different denominations, went to temple, different things, tried different things out. Nothing really stuck. I was never particularly religious. But yeah, I was kind of raised with it, going to church every Sunday until like 12 or 13. And then it was only on the holidays.
Well, because I only reason I backtracked on that is because of what we were just talking about with Jerry here. And sometimes that is interconnected, as we're seeing. So, and also it also speaks of kind of, the religious wash one gets at a young age.
Honestly, religion, it's funny. I don't think I had any abuse within religion. But the real wash on me happened when I was a kid, and it had to do with the teachings of sex and virginity and holding yourself out and not wanting to do things until you're married. All of that dogmatic stuff was drilled into my head by my parents, which were, just, hey, we don't want you getting somebody pregnant. We don't want you coming home with a STD. But their way of reinforcing it was through the religious routes. And I stuck with those reasons probably until I was like 18. So I wasn't religious, but I kept the core systems people would live by.
Well, what changed? What changed into who you were then as to who you are now with this kind of religious stuff?
Oh, so I don't remember the exact focal point of what turned me. I do remember that I used to be very, very science based. And of course, having abuse in your life, it gives you a very negative view on the world. So even then, I wasn't like super religious. I ended up going big time back to the and religious isn't even the right word, but understanding that there is fundamentally something underlying reality that has substance or
Mm-hmm.
agency.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to understand it just to understand that it's there. And the big thing for me was The Field by Lynn McTaggart. I don't know if you're familiar with her work or that book.
You know, I'm drawing a blank, and yet it seems familiar. I read so
Is that the
much.
one about the reality field, like the field in
The
which we
Field.
exist?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't read
Yeah,
it.
and she has another book that she just came out. I just downloaded to listen. I didn't even realize it had come out. Called Pieces. Actually, she's going to be on Gray America pretty soon. She was just on Gordon White's podcast, Rune Soup. A very good episode. I really enjoyed it. I immediately downloaded the book. But uh, essentially, she draws the correlation with all the scientific studies to lay out that, look, precognition exists.
Mm-hmm.
These are the
Mm-hmm.
studies that prove it. Prayer works. You can program water. You can change physical reality with this experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And laid out the science in such a way that it fundamentally changed my worldview. And I should say I was on a slow turn that way. I was listening to a lot of coast to coast, but of course, aliens, UFOs were always my forte and interest. And then as soon as I heard her, that got me right back super interested into the science. And since then, I've gone on the complete metaphysical route, it's not even religious. I think it's more of a looking at the evidence and the science that's there and realizing that it points to much larger things beneath the surface.
Oh,
Sorry, that was a long way to
absolutely.
get that.
No, but that's perfect, and it's a perfect transition into this part of the show too, which is states of consciousness via usually the dream is the gate, but if you're accessing them in other ways, um, if you're aware of them, and certainly having that non-locality experience brings that in. What? How do I put this? um, do you have triggers to get into a state that is outside a meditative state that is luminal? Do you do this? Is this a practice at all,
No,
or is it just
I
intellectual fodder?
I'm not sure what you're asking exactly.
Accessing other states consciously. So, because it sounds like, I mean, you did with your non-locality
Okay, I see.
experience.
Okay, so the closest I would say, and I don't have a trigger per se that I know. I do get occasional precog, and it manifests itself 100% visually. I've got a I'm very visually orientated. Like I don't even have to close my eyes. I can visualize something in fully 3D, walk myself around an environment I can remember like a room,
Mm-hmm.
and put myself within that space. So like my vision will shut down and I'll start literally seeing in my mind, just like it was my eyes, what's going on. And I'll have that same type of thing, but it'll overcome me where I'll be it's usually when I'm driving in a car. So maybe the trigger is that my mind is wandering slightly because I'm not exactly in a
Yes.
specific thought, but
Yes.
I will all of a sudden see something happen like, you know, uh, railroad track lights come on, or the changing of a light, or it'll be coming around a corner and having a visual that there's going to be a snake crossing in front of the road and seeing it cross, and then hitting my brakes and slowing around and coming around a corner on a dirt road where it's all broken up and you can't see it, and the exact same thing plays out before me. Like
Oh,
that's the stuff
chills.
I have. But And I also have an interesting thing. I forget what it's called. It's tied to a certain sort of visual synesthesia. And I've had this happen at the same time as the precog, which is a little strange. And it's where you see two colors at the same time. And
Yes.
okay, not many people have heard about this. I see sometimes green and red exactly at the same time. And it's usually on LED lights. I don't know if it's the specific frequency that they use in the reds and the greens for the traffic lights, but I'll
Huh.
start to see where the light will just start to almost fluctuate and become both colors at the same time. It's a completely unique way. I can't even explain it. I've seen some representations online where you can actually take two squares of different colors, usually cyan and yellow, or blue, or I'm sorry, green and red, and you put them next to each other and you cross your eyes, and then as you see the
Yes.
squares come together, you kind of get a representation of what it looks like. But I'll have that happen at the same time that I'll get the precog that like a light's going to change or the railroad ties are going to come down.
Synesthesia. What is it? It's got a name. That's interesting though that it's connected with the precog stuff. Very I find that fascinating. Before you said that though, I was also reverting back to the MyLab stuff and thinking about some of the light uh conditioning. I'm not sure what they called it, but that's interesting. So deja vu, Adam. Do you experience
Oh, all the
them
time,
when you
all the
so
time.
tell
And
us your experience of them.
oh, this is going to sound weird because I can't remember any specifics, but they're always where it'll happen. And I go, I know I've been here. I felt this before, but I know it's not the exact same thing replaying, but it's the exact same set of scenario. It's almost like everything played out exactly the same, except for I'm on the level looks different, the world looks different, the texture is different, the environment's different, but all the characters, the situations, like it's so familiar that I
Mhm.
understand it from that level that I'm going, no, I know what's happening. I know that I've been here. I know that this is going on, but I know it wasn't this exact room,
Mhm.
but it involved this person, this person. Like, so my deja vus feel very real, and I recognize and feel them coming on and re-experience them. Yeah.
Have you ever been able to tag one into like maybe a dream you had in the past, or so beyond that recognition and where things are slightly askew, have there been the strays that maybe seem like a precog experience from earlier in your life and then it's playing out through the deja vu?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And then what so the general feeling though, what does it feel like when you have them besides the
Like
visuals?
like
Like in
precog.
deja vu in particular.
Extreme familiarity, knowing, very uncanniness. Um, it's also a little unnerving,
Mhm.
almost like the feeling that you get when you're lost and
Mhm.
you don't feel like you know where you're at, but at the same time, you don't have any of the fear. So it's kind of weird that like it's a weird experience to be reliving something per se.
Mhm.
And so I don't know, it has an anxiety that builds on it from me from that perspective.
Yeah, yeah, I can relate to that. Definitely. Um what do you think dreaming is? What's its purpose? What is it? Are we there? Are we here?
I think perception's reality. Honestly, whatever you're
Well, and so dreaming,
so
the
dreams are
perception of
real.
dreaming. Yeah.
Yeah, dreams are real to me. Um, it seems weird that I go to bed every night and I believe that this is totally real. And then I go to bed and most of the time I don't know what happens. Occasionally I remember. So to me, why wouldn't when I go to bed and I remember a dream, instead of just going to sleep and not remembering, how come I don't do the reverse and just wake up and not remember? So to me, it doesn't matter. If it feels real, then it fucking feels real. Oh, wait, you can lucid dream. You can go and change reality in your dreams. Wait, so we call this reality and we can change what's going on in our dream. So maybe the rules in one world are just more tight than the other. You know, it's harder to manipulate the environment and the other one's testing ground. I don't know, but I believe they're both real.
Okay, so what do you think what do you think this experience is in what we consider waking life, where it seems, there's like this immediacy here, and then there's always that, like, the shaking down of, you got to pay taxes, you got to go to work, all that stuff nagging at us that keeps us somehow enslaved to this life. What do you think this is all about, this end?
Okay. Jerry's going to hate me on this.
I can't imagine.
I'm going to go to Paul, because I'm going to go to Paul Stamets.
I'm not going to hate you. I knew it would come up.
I've come, my core belief, or what is fascinated my mind, has been this idea of Paul Stamets, who, if anybody isn't familiar with him, should look him up. His last 2 Joe Rogan experiences are really good water breakers for him. He's essentially the top mushroom scientist in the world.
He's amazing.
Credentials that are beyond dispute. Worked for the Defense Department, had information of his withheld by governments, or from the U.S. government, because they were worried that people would find the cure to smallpox.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's as legit as they get, and he's talking about that the science shows, when you look at mushrooms, that what they are really doing is that they are cultivating the entire environment around us for the plants, for the animals, for everything. And when I look at the world, and when I look at the universe, I look at everything. I look at how it works as a system together, that the whole earth is this one organism. We are part of that organism. And just like in a person, where we have cells and organs and, different parts that function all differently, you get cancers and diseases. And so I kind of look at, this old, Native American belief that the true way to live is to live in, I can't think of the right word, but it just completeness with your environment. You want to prevent the least amount of harm. You want to do the best for everything around you.
In synergy with.
Yeah. So my idea is just, if you try to live your life in a way that benefits everybody around you, that ultimately that's what the entire universe is working towards. It's working towards this one cohesive, cooperative existence. And that's what I look at the God state as. Like look at all the ills that we have of man. We have enough resources to feed, clothe, and provide, and allow people all over the world to be creative, to take and get rid of the inequality between people. But we don't. We perpetrate these class structures and these systems of servitude where, these debt-based. I mean, look, everybody that has debt is a slave. Everybody that's caught up in the prison system having to work on the side of the road is still a slave.
Oh, yeah.
These things just follow us. So at the core of existence and reality, to me, is if we can work in complete harmony with the world and the environment around us, if we truly master that, we are going to master this reality and become godlike in a way that we can't understand. So I don't know. To get back to it, when I don't even know how to explain what I think about is where we go, or where the good is, or how I see we're structured, but I see the ills of how we structure ourselves now. Meaning, I look at like a corporation, and Monsanto's or Walmart, or pick your demon. They become a demon. They become this monster. They become something that has its own will, that based on the prerequisites that were put into its creation, it has to keep growing and doing. And I've become fascinated with this idea that in the same way that we are, part of a cell, that we're creating these much larger systems that act like larger organisms within the system. And that we need to be very, very cognizant of the things that we create. And I think it goes into all of reality. The idea that until you can build walls, that changes the way that you section your mind. When you start writing on paper and using graph paper and using math and numbers and symbols, you start creating these barriers and these walls and these things to structure and organize and create things from. And all of those things build up into these institutions and these things. And yeah, I don't know. I kind of look at capitalism that way. I don't think capitalism is bad, but I think that the rules that drive it inherently make it only be able to be bad.
I'm surprised that you haven't sought out the sacred mushroom with your love of Stamets, who I agree, he's incredible. He lives in my neck of the woods. So I hear. Is that
Oh,
something you may do?
I definitely do it. It's all about access. I don't
Yeah,
have access, so I don't.
yeah, I can understand that. So, okay, that very good. What on the same thread here, what do you think the state of death is then? So in juxtaposition to life and dreaming.
My gut feeling is that there is no such thing as something that does not or ceases to exist. I think that everything continues on forever. I think everything's
So
cyclical.
yeah, okay. So what's the point of the process then? Why do we have it as a collective experience? And for that matter, birth, because I think they maybe are the same point, right? Circled.
It's a good question. I kind of go back to this idea that it's possibly just a form of evolution. You know, we look at how galaxies and the world evolves and how we see bacteria and things evolve within the world. And I don't wonder if the entire universe, including consciousness, isn't involved in this cyclical evolution. And that we are tied up in that in order to do that, you have to live, experience, and die without having full memory of your source.
So so staying here on this, in any dreams throughout your life, have you encountered people that you know are dead, that you know that have passed? Do you encounter them?
No, nope. Not that I remember.
And so also, what do you think about the experience of anomalies such as like hauntings and ghosts? And not that I'm just going to leave that open ended.
No, I'm a total believer. Not to say that I've experienced everything, but I've had some poltergeist experience that I've since chalked up to emotions. So yeah, I'm a total believer in the ability for a place to be haunted. You know, plus I followed some of the work of like David Roundtree, and I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of good scientific evidence to show gamma ray bursts, specific gravity changes, thermal changes of both heat and cold, all these different events that seem to be related to some sort of actual phenomena going on, not just a perceived phenomenon. So yeah, I'm a
And
believer.
so, okay, so then parsing that out further, so there's like that whole residual time thing, you know, someone just tapping into routines and stuff like that, that's just energy that's repeating, as opposed to sentient entities that were once maybe us, or they are other dimensional, you know, whatever you want to call those, fairies, aliens, demons, angels. Is there a difference for you in these things?
Not specifically. No.
Okay, interesting. So, and then I want to come round to, 'cause this is about where we wrap Nox Mente up anyway. With before we ask questions, I wanted to specifically with you on the grays thing. What do you so having studied and been part of digging down those rabbit holes of ufology and all that, what do you think is going on with that? What are the grays? What are these other ETs? What's there?
I would say that it's almost my favorite quote unquote go to for most questions that it's not just one answer. Almost certainly military and government has used that as a cover for certain types of experiments and abduction. That's had to have happened. There's probably some sort of alien out there that is like a gray. People have dreams about it. I'm sure
Mhm.
that there's some sort of, you know, part of our reality. I remember watching, like, and I always go back to thinking this might be true too, that there was a television show called Official Denial, in which there's an alien named Doss who comes from the future, and they've changed their genetics to such a terrible degree that they can no longer reproduce, and they've destroyed the earth so that they can no longer live on the earth. And that's part of why they had to, like, change themselves to survive. And so I think it could be multifaceted. And I also kind of like this idea that when you take psychedelics or you go into sleep paralysis or you have these states that, okay, maybe you are really just having a drug induced state and you are going off to this other reality. And at the same time, you may also be encountering an entity or an alien or some other consciousness that is there in that space too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's I think if we could boil down the true answer, it would probably be multifaceted, at least on Grays.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's in there. I guess I was also trying to scan your ideas on like multiverse, alternate, the dimensions side by side, that whole thing.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fascinating. It certainly, in my mind, logically makes sense for that to explain precog, um, events of knowing, doing things where you have your life flash before your eyes, or you get into a situation where you know what the fuck you need to do. It's like you've been there before, right? Well, maybe you have. Maybe, this is the evolutionary process and we're running through, and it's the old idea that the decision that you make right now, the way that you change the world is by changing yourself right now. It's very important because however you got to this point today, the next decision you might make is going to be a left or the right. But if the right's the better decision for making you and the world go better, well, think about it. If your ancestors, you or everybody else. And so that's really where my mind has gotten, that there might be the cycle that's going through, and you have these cyclical deja vu dreams, precoggy psychic events. It brings in why quantum entanglement and entropy would
Yes.
possibly work in that way.
Yes.
And I almost think that's what past lives, that's what all this memory crossover is. It's us evolving and going through and making a new reality choice by choice.
Right. Which in the end really is bringing us back to the moment, right? The here and now, and calling upon whatever into more of a focused sense of consciousness, if you will, of will.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you take the supposition that the consciousness is ultimate, that you could have consciousness that just is everything in the universe. And when I think about a consciousness like that, how it would, sorry, I lost my train of thought on that. I'm trying to.
You sound like you were going somewhere good too.
I was.
The here and now consciousness, like all of these other dimensions and all of this other energy and stuff that kind of is agitating around, say, a speck in a clam, that makes us focus sharply here and now, right now.
This is what I was going to say. Yeah, in a universe of infinite possibilities where anything could happen, where consciousness could be and create anything that it wanted, that would mean that we really are only as far away as our thoughts can take us. Mm-hmm. And when I think of what I think of magic, which is thoughts, which is consciousness, the computer, the microphone in front of you, the satellites, whatever the vehicle that you drive, all that was manufactured in somebody's mind and brought through and manifest in reality. So when I truly believe that if I can think it, then it can be. If I can imagine the most fantastical scientific or sci-fi story, that was the most scientific, fantastical story that Jules Verne's told, and the person before that told. And we're always on this precipice. So my ultimate vision of the universe is I kind of imagine like this sphere that's filled with an infinite number of points, but they show spatial relations to each other. And that the only thing in this is just information. And this information is manifest through a structure. And all that's different is the distance between all these little structures and how they interact and line up for each other. So I think, well, if I want to change consciousness and change reality to be any fucking thing I want, anything that you want, whatever reality is, you're here, but you got to get over here. And so as you move through and you make all these different choices, you're kind of making different decisions to get you to that reality. And that's what we're doing as a civilization. We're moving to wherever the hell we want to go, but we can only move through the reality that is closest to us to get to where we're going. But we can go anywhere. So I don't know. That's how I see consciousness. Maybe if you wanted to explore infinite possibility, how would you do it if you just were? Well, that might be a way.
Oh, that was excellent. That was
How would
excellent.
you know if you've finished exploring it all, though?
I don't think you can. And this would get me to the idea that the point is the experience. You know, it's not the existence.
Right, but I'm saying maybe there's a finite amount of experiences.
There could be.
There must be.
We talked about that last week, actually, with this kind of, and Jerry's been talking about that with this kind of looping of the stories, the end of the stories. I'm sure that you've been in those conversations with him.
Didn't even think about that. Yeah, totally. We could talk about that afterwards.
Yeah, I'm really interested in
The
that.
cyclical nature of time and plots,
Mm-hmm.
archetypal stories that seem to play out in different things, especially in media.
I find it very fascinating that until you and I have a symbol on something to agree upon, it's hard to anchor an idea, a thought, and convey something. And once you
That's
do,
key.
then we can create something, which means that those symbols are out there. And all creativity is doing is grasping a symbol and an idea. And this gets right into Rupert Sheldrake's work of morphic resonance.
Hmm.
And how that plays out with cultures and with people and with, you know, the 100 monkeys and
Yes.
the birds with the milk jug tops. It's all tied in. And that's what I mean. I think that there's direct proof that there's something underlying a morphic evolution.
Well, do you think that what's separating this waking experience and gives it its more immediate feedback is the ego? Say from the, because in the dreamscape, really that is just a small player. And even when you get lucidity, it's still, you're not even, you can find a mirror and you're not even anything like you thought you were. So do you think that what role is the ego playing in this state of experience and collectively, as we were just saying, to get collective agreement on symbols?
The only thing I know is that the ego causes suffering.
Yes, indeed. That's
Because
true.
you can't live in the moment. I mean, look at any animal that is hunting. It's not worried about dying. It's living in that moment.
Well, and more surface level. It's not worried about how its hair is looking and, you know,
Yeah,
all the silly stuff Homo sapiens sapiens.
yeah. So it's
true.
interesting. We find that we can find meaning in life because of it, but at the same time, it disallows not everybody, but a vast majority of people from being able to enjoy it because you're worried about planning for the future, which you ultimately know is finite.
So when you're in your dreamscape, when you're in the majority of your dreams, do you identify as, you did say behind the eyes, which makes me think that you're coming at it from Adam as we are talking right now.
Yep. It's exactly as I was in that environment.
So it's your ego's there.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, it's sorry, I was swallowing tea. Um I've been pondering a lot lately that idea of and the only reason it's skewed now is because every time I find a reflective surface, I don't look anything like I do here, and sometimes grotesquely so. Like, you know, just I mean, I just would never imagine that I would dream myself that way, and these are deeper layers. These are not these are deeper layers in my unconscious or whatever that plane is. So I think sometimes less of it's not necessarily on my own, you know, oh, I need a haircut or something like that. Where I feel like the ego is strips away, leaves away, and it's almost like a piece of me, like a piece of clothing comes off in a way.
That's interesting.
So it's not ego driven. When I get to that point in the dream, I feel like I've now somehow left the ego because I have no association to the image. I just was able to identify myself, cut myself out of the dream reality, right? Cut myself out and see that, okay, here I am. And I know that I is also part of that ego thing. But then when I see myself, I have no association to that image. And I'm also functioning in a space, like in a video game, where I'm not I. So I'm not functioning as Nish. I don't have the hangups Nish has. I'm functioning in that landscape with that set of objectives and, journeys, whatever's going
That's
on.
interesting. Yeah, mine almost seems the opposite. Like it's all anxiety and I'm worried about something. I'm trying to stop something.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a somewhere where my ego is directly involved.
Are you that way in your waking life? Do you have a lot to worry about?
No, but I can. My mother was a worrywart, and I've worked very hard to brush that off. So it's ingrained, but it's not something that often overcomes me.
Do you nitpick things a lot? Do you have a certain standard, and if they don't reach, are you a control freak at all in your life?
Yes and no. I mean, on some things, yes, completely, and then on other things, to the extreme opposite. Like I'll go out to dinner and ask the hostess, what their favorite thing on the menu is, and then I'll just order that.
Okay.
And then, they'll be arguing with me because they don't want to tell me what their
Yeah.
favorite thing is because they don't want it to get sent back because I won't like it and I'm
Yeah.
not that person. But yeah, that's the type. Sometimes I'm just so like I can't make a decision on things because I truly don't have an opinion one way or the other. I'm open for anything.
Okay. So that's why I was just trying to maybe needle out any reasons why your dreams would have such anxiety in them.
Yeah, I don't know, but some
And
things
it
I do
doesn't
get.
sound like it though from your person like this from the Adam I know here. You don't come off that way at all. So it's interesting that your dreams are playing out that way. But on that note, we should wrap Nox Mente up. Are there questions, Jerry?
I haven't gotten any yet. And if you're listening and you'd like to call in, we now have a call-in number.
We have a call-in number, Adam.
Which is on the screen. And if you're just
Should I call in?
listening, no.
I love that we have a call-in number, though. This is new and fancy.
It is new and fancy. So, yeah, so there's no one in chat. Mary's here. Darcy, they came back. There was no one here a few minutes ago.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
We had a full house. The only time I looked, we had a full house.
They're still watching.
Oh, you're not talking. I got you.
I know, girl.
We see you. All right. Well, then we should. Thank you, Adam, for being on Nox Mente. I've been looking forward to this. It's been fun watching you in Discord and all your antics with all the guys and some ladies on all the
It's not
blog.
our fault that women aren't nerds.
I know there are just very few of us in here, it seems.
It's Darren and Graham's fault they're not sexy enough.
Yeah, true.
Grimsteak. Or Grimerica.
Yeah, Graham. Darren and Graham. Graham's going to be on in a few weeks.
Oh, nice.
Like first week of February.
Which Grim?
Graham.
Oh, Graham. Graham. That's right.
C. Eddie Dunlop.
Yes. Graham the calves, man. All right. So since no one's called on my first live call, right? Thank you so much, everyone. Adam, where can everyone find you other than
friendstoknow.space on Twitter at friendstoknow, email ftk@nym.hush.com. Yeah, I'm on the social media or in the Discord chats.
Mm-hmm. And I'll put all his links in the description. And
Adam's everywhere.
Adam's everywhere and chatty, so be sure to chat him up.
I might wear you out.
It's all interesting.
I can vouch for that. Oh, it's never boring. All right, and be sure to tune in next week. We'll have Walter Bosley as our guest on Nox Mente. Yeah,
that's going to be fun.
It's going to be a good show. So thank you, everyone. Good night, and see you later.
Thank you, everyone.